Welcome to Advanced Hair Edge Masking in Photoshop CS6. This step-by-step tutorial will examine how to use hard light blend mode to preserve the finest hair wisp details for convincing image composites. We will start with this image, shot against a gray seamless background, and combine it with this new background to create this seamless composite. We will be learning about a range of different techniques, including using the magic wand to make a selection, how to use the Refine Edge dialog to get a convincing hair edge, using layer masks, how to use a hard light blend mode to blend with a new background, how to use curves to adjust for 128 blending neutral mid-gray tone, and how to use layer groups to combine layers. So let's get started. Okay, so here we are, and we're going to mask and isolate this figure, this subject, which is shot against a gray seamless background. And one thing to notice here, I'm going to go ahead and get my eyedropper tool. As I move around the image, we can see that most of this background kind of ranges very close in the RGB values. If you look over here at the RGB values as I move around, it's all pretty close to 128 medium gray. Some areas a little bit darker, some a little bit lighter, but in general it's all pretty close and it's pretty neutral. This is the key for this technique to work effectively. But right now we need to make a selection of to create a layer mask for this subject. So we're going to use the magic wand tool, which is underneath the quick select tool here, and I'll select that magic wand, and I can simply click into the background. Since it's nice and seamless here, it's very easy to select the background rather than the subject. And I'll hold down the shift key here to add to the selection, and I can maybe add a few more areas inside the hair here. But it's going to be hard for me to get into these areas, okay? So I'm going to leave those alone for now. And since we want to have the subject selected and not the background, I'm going to go up here under my select menu and select inverse. So now the exact opposite is selected. Instead of the background being selected, we now have the subject selected. Then, of course, our next step is going to be Refine Edge. So under the Select menu again, I select Refine Edge. And I'll get my Refine Edge dialog here. And right now we're viewing against white. Of course, we can view against black, or we can get the overlay color here, and it helps us to visualize the selection differently. I'm going to go ahead and stick with white for now, and I want to refine the edge. The first thing I start to do is using edge detection. I will select a radius, and go ahead and select a fairly decent size radius here. Now you can see how Photoshop is now trying to finesse the edge and make it a little softer. The problem is that it's not really getting into the interior, because, let's show the radius here. If I check that, you can see that when I select a radius, it's only making a border around the initial selection, so it's not really getting inside that very much. But I can paint with the cursor, which turns into a brush now as I move into the image, and I can kind of paint around the areas that I want Photoshop to consider for the edge, for finding the edge. But since we have such a large area to paint into, I'm going to uncheck Show Radius so that I can see exactly where I'm painting, and I want to sort of brush over areas that that show part of that gray background. You can see some of that gray background coming through the wisps of the hair here, and I want to make sure that I sort of paint over all those areas. And when I do that, Photoshop again revises the mask, and now the mask is a little bit better. Let's work this side as well here. and we'll work this side. Now this particular subject, this is pretty extreme. You know, the background tone is very similar to the tone of some of these hair wisps, and Photoshop's having a hard time trying to determine what is hair and what is background here. So we're not going to get a really great mask in this case. If I had shot against a green screen, yes, maybe, but even a green screen, there's some fine hair wisps, and they alternate. They go dark and then light, and it's just really hard to find out exactly what's happening with the edge here automatically like this. So we're going to have another strategy for really preserving as much of this flyaway hair as possible. So we're going to move on. I'm going to stop here because I'm going to use a different technique in combination with this to create my final composite. But the first thing I want to do now is determine where I want to send this refined selection to. I could take it back to the selection here, but I really want to end up with a new layer and a layer mask. So I'm going to select this in this output drop down here, and then click on OK. Now when Photoshop is done calculating, I see that I have a new layer here, and this is sort of my masked version, and it's on top of the original background. So if I select the original background, you can see that it has the gray here. Now this is the key to this technique, is I'm going to take both of these layers. I'm going to select both of them by shift clicking, so I've got both of those layers highlighted, and I'm going to drag that using the move tool. I'll drag both of them up to the tab representing the new background document. So it comes forward, I drag this down, and there is my subject against the background, but I'm also including the original unmasked layer. And it'll become clear why I'm doing that in a minute. But first, let's resize this. Since I have both of these layers selected, I can do a Command or Control T to bring up the free transform, and I can scale this up. I'll hold down the Shift key while I do this so that I don't distort the aspect ratio of the image. And we'll get her about the right size, and then accept that transform by clicking on this little check mark here. Okay, so part of the way this technique works is I'm going to turn off the top layer and select this layer, which is the original unmasked background layer, and we'll just label it unmasked. Okay, so now this unmasked layer, I'm going to change the blend mode for this layer from normal to hard light. And now you can see it sort of blends in with the background image. The way hard light works, it's one of those kind of contrast enhancing blend modes like overlay and soft light. And hard light, the neutral color or tone for hard light is 50% gray. Now 50% gray, as far as Photoshop is concerned for blending considerations, is 128. So in the background where we had a value of 128, it's pretty much completely transparent. Anything that deviates from 128 will affect the background as far as it deviates from that medium gray. In hard light mode is the most contrasty, so as the hair gets darker, it actually blocks and overpowers the background here. So we get a lot of little detail in that hair edge, and we're going to take advantage of this when we build the final image composite. But right now, some areas of this background are a little bit darker, so I'm just going to need to mask those off. So I'm going to add a layer mask here. And we don't need our info panel here anymore. I'm going to take a brush now and using black, paint into the layer mask to hide the areas, the background areas that are a little bit darker than middle gray. But I'm going to go ahead and kind of preserve, I'm not going to brush into the hair. So I'm just kind of masking off most of the background here. And I don't need this part of this layer, so I'm going to mask that off too, because this area of the background is a little bit darker than I'd like. Okay, so now I'm going to turn on my top layer. And you see now my top layer, you can see parts of that gray background in there. And I'm going to want to get rid of those parts. But I don't necessarily want to destroy the mask that's already there, because if I need to come back for some reason or reuse that mask, I'd like it to stay unaltered. So what I'm going to do is put this layer into a group. So come on over here to the Layers Flyaway menu here, the Layer Options menu, and I'm going to say New Group from Layers. Now this is my masked subject, so I'll label it again. And I'm really just putting it in this group here so that I can add another layer mask to this layer. So right now I've got one layer mask. I can attach another layer mask to the group just by coming down here and clicking on the layer mask icon. And now I can use this mask to control this layer without destroying the existing mask that's there. So again, I'll make sure that layer mask is selected. I'll take a brush with black, and now I'm going to brush into the hair here, all along this edge, and reveal the hair wisps that are there, and actually get also some of that background color to show through the hair. Now as I get close here, this is one reason why I don't want to destroy the existing layer mask that's in there, because if I come in and I brush too far, I'm going to show too much of that background through the face, and I don't want to do that. But I'm okay around the edges and getting a little bit of that color of the background here into the hair, because that just makes it blend in with the background better. Now you see over here I've brushed a little too far. I'm going to come back and we'll brush back with white just to get that a little cleaner there. And we're going to actually alter the color of this highlight a bit, so in this case I don't have to be that critical here either. Now you can see that this hair is maybe perhaps a bit too transparent. So to correct for that, I can also double up on this unmasked layer here. If I just duplicate it, I'll drag it onto the new layer icon and make a copy of it, it gets much stronger, right? Now maybe that's, perhaps that's a little too strong. Let's back it off just a little bit, because I want to see some of that transparency coming in through the hair. On this side of the face, it's mostly her regular hair. Let me turn off this background. You can kind of see this is I'm covering up the subject here with full strength of that top layer. But all the hair wisps now are represented by these two layers combined. And as we can see here, I've got every single fine little hair that existed in the original photograph, and it's just blending nicely with the background. So now I've got in essence, 3 layers and 1 layer group here that are combined to create this one subject. Just for organizational purposes, I can also put these layers into a group. So I'm going to go ahead and select all 3 of these. Hold down the Shift key and get all 3 layers highlighted and selected here. And I'll put those into the group. I'll do a new group from layers. And we'll call this our girl here. And now that whole group, I can treat it as if it was one layer and move it around, and you can kind of see how it blends with the background. I'm noticing a little area of mistake here where I haven't masked this. So a little trick here to make sure that you don't have holes in your mask is to solo the mask. So if I hold down the Option key and click on that mask, which was masking off the hair wisps from the top layer, I can see, oh yes, this, I didn't get that area painted in. So I'm going to go ahead, get my brush and paint with black here to make sure that's covered up. And there I've got it so that I'm not seeing any of that gray background now. And I can move and adjust the position of the subject by selecting the group. I select all 3 of those layers. One of the things that's bothering me about this image, the same sort of thing we've seen before, where the lighting doesn't match the background. So she has pale white highlights, and she's in this sort of sunset environment. So really what I'd like to do is get those white highlights to come down to a yellow or kind of an orange. So let's zoom in here just a little bit. And I'm going to go inside of this group here for that top layer. I'll highlight that layer, the top layer, and I'm going to add a curves adjustment in this case. So I'll click on the curves adjustment tool and make sure that it's clipped to the underlying layer. So I click on this icon here, and now the curve is only affecting this top layer. And I'm going to take first and just take the blue channel highlight down so that now everything's going to turn kind of yellow. Okay, we'll take it down to about midway, and then I'm going to take the green channel highlight down, and it'll be a little more orange. Okay, something like that. Now, this curve, if I toggle it on and off, it's making the whole thing kind of orange. I have to decide if I like that, I'll leave it alone, or if I want to bring back some of her more normal color and just keep this in the highlights, I'll use another trick here. So this is kind of warmth here, and I'm going to now use advanced blend options here. So I can get to that from my layer options flyaway and select blending options. And here, what I'm concerned with is this area, the blend if area, and I've got a highlight, and the other tones are a bit darker than this highlight area. So I want to blend through that warming curve in where the subject gets darker than this highlight area. So I'm going to start by taking the black slider here in the underlying layer, and I'm going to move it up, and you can see now it's starting to peel off. That curve adjustment is now peeling off the darker tones. And I just want to take it right to the point where I'm getting a highlight. And the problem now is that the transition is very abrupt. I can see a hard edge line here. And that's because I'm transitioning right at this one level, 109. So what I need to do is create a transition area where it gradually transitions, And the secret technique for that is to hold down the Option or Alt key, and then this little triangle here can be split apart. It's actually in two halves. So if I get to one side and click it and drag it apart, now I don't have to keep holding down the Option or Alt key. I can drag this and make a soft transition into the highlight. So something like that. And now we can see that if I toggle this curve on and off, I'm really just knocking that white down to a warmer tone, and that helps to blend her with the background. All right then. Well, that makes the final composite, and you can see it's all put inside of this group here. So I can treat all these complex layers as one unit, and that makes it easy to kind of move everything around without breaking the alignment apart. And there you have it. Well, thank you for watching. Please consider checking out my website, where I share various other tutorials, as well as my blog, where you will find articles, tutorials, and my recent photography adventures. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.